Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Erin Gray, coming out of Boise, Idaho. Also has roots in Austin, Texas, one of my favorite cities in the world. And she is the founder of Generate a Life Well Lived. And what's interesting is she's got a background as a CFP, but she's going to talk about this classic overachiever hamster wheel overwork kind of, and she's going to talk about the money mindsets, and hopefully that resonates to a lot of the audience who are doctors, lawyers, dentists, high achievers as well. And I'm really excited for the conversation. So Erin, welcome.
Thanks, Christopher, for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I know we talked a little bit earlier, and I think what your message will really resonate. So just share your story, and we'll dive into the questions.
Yeah, I think like a lot of your listeners, I have been in your shoes. I sometimes go back into those shoes, right? And I was the classic overachiever, right? Like you are told to go to college and you're told to get a degree and you're told like you want to make money and you want to have all of these things. And it's almost like I call it like I used to live like a checklist life. And even though I had accomplished all of the things that I thought would make me happy and I would feel fulfilled, it was probably more like 10 years ago, but really started to really get at it around 5 years ago. And what am I doing with my life? Like I have all of this and I still don't feel happy and I still don't feel fulfilled and have everything that I thought that I wanted. And there also came a lot of guilt with that because there are people in the world that don't have what I had. And so you have shame and guilt around that because why are you complaining? You have money, you get to go on vacations, you have houses. What are you complaining about? So there's this quietness, I think, that a lot of us might sit with or be with because we don't want to share that with other people because we feel a lot of shame and guilt around that. And I just want to say, if that is what you're feeling, like you aren't alone. And the more that those of us that have this feel this, that we talk about it, the more that we bring it to light, the more that it's, you know what, there is no someone gets to suffer worse award. And so I just got to a point where I was like, I don't want to live for retirement. And that's really what I was doing. And I knew that if I continued on this route, like it would be another 10 years is where we were going towards, but I just can't imagine going another 10 years at the rate that I was going. And so I knew that things needed to shift. And so at the time, I was working in my family's business, running all of the finance and the operations side. And I knew I didn't want to buy it because if I bought it, it would be definitely from a money standpoint. It would not be from a heart's desire standpoint. And so I got up enough courage over time. This is the short version. This didn't happen overnight, but courage to quit and start my own coaching practice and help other people along the same similar journey. And probably 2 years in, I was like, I don't want to work right now. Like I'd never not worked. And so what turned into 3 months of taking time off ended up being 3 years. And so that's being able to travel, spend time with my family. I scheduled my only child's birth around payroll. And so just really taking time to be versus do. And so now I help other women specifically, mainly just transform their relationship with money and their relationship with themselves.
You know, with that story, I think it really resonates again. And the thing is, what is this constant, this kind of overachiever working, and how does it relate to money mindsets and in your clients? Because I know you work with entrepreneurs and fix their mindsets. Talk about that.
Yeah, I think that there is a direct correlation of earning love and earning grades when we were younger we just switch it to business and it just becomes money with business. And we have so much wrapped up in our identity and our value of how much money we make and what we make that mean about ourselves, like how our business is. And really the two are completely separate, right? But we have so much intertwined because we have not taken the time to sit down and to feel what needed to be felt. And we're chasing things in order to feel a certain way versus doing an inside out job.
Yeah, I really love that. It's like fulfilling, and a lot of it comes from this emotional hole, and we have to, again, it's some of it's parenting, some of it's societal, some of it could be early childhood trauma. So The next kind of a follow-up question I have for you is this for those individuals that kind of feel what you're feeling, and how do you like where their identity but is tied up in their finances and their job, and they know it's wrong, but they know if they actually have to separate themselves from it, it's gonna cause a lot of havoc. Could be result in a divorce, it may result in unemployment, it may result in scaling back. How do you people like reconcile? Because that these are really big shifts and changes.
Yeah, slowly. I think in the self-development world, we want to do something. We want to do things really quickly and go big or go home, or like we need to be constantly. No, the nervous system I want you to think about your nervous system like a rubber band, right? If you extend that rubber band too much, it's going to pop. And that's the way that our nervous system is. And so when you try to go from, okay, I think I want to quit my job, and that's what you're in that moment, or you haven't ever taken off a day of work because you feel ill, or you want just a mental day, going from that to I'm quitting my job next week is a huge jump for a lot of people. And you haven't built up your, I call it your nervous system regulation to acclimate to that. So I always say start slow, right? Start with where are you and where do you want to go? And we don't have to do that overnight. And the other thing that I think a lot of people think is when I get to this point, the lie that we've been sold is the thing is going to be what is going to create the feeling, right? Versus we can feel calm and at peace even when we have a job or a business that we're not super stoked about. We can have joy and have fun and fulfillment in the little things, which sounds so cliche, but it's really so true. And I think that a lot of us we're trying to get away from something versus moving towards something. So we want to get out of this as quickly as possible because we don't like the feeling that we are feeling versus allowing those feelings. Like they're there to tell us something. They are a messenger to us, right? Our bodies are our greatest messengers. And so if we are thinking, okay, and I think it's also too, is are we willing? A lot of us, some of us, sometimes we aren't willing to do. And when I say the hard stuff, for us high achievers, the hard stuff isn't working more. The hard stuff isn't making more money and hustling. The hard stuff is, you know what? I feel really tired today. I'm going to take a day off. The hard stuff is, you know what? I know everyone is asking me for all of this help, but you know what? I'm going to say no to everyone today. That's the hard stuff for us. And I don't think that we talk about that. And we're in a culture of hustle and hurry and get to the top as quickly as possible, which there is no top. And so the things that I really help my clients with is getting into the body. We've been so disconnected, like you said, whether it be from childhood or societal conditioning, or there's so many different ways that we've been conditioned to disconnect from the body. And in a way, it did keep us safe. And also, in order to reconnect, we do have to come back home to our bodies and to listen to what our bodies are saying.
And when you reconnect with your body, what are some quick and easy ways to just reconnect and get in and again reconnect?
Yeah, I think the simplest is our breath. Like how many of us actually, if you were to ask yourself right now, that if you're listening, are you breathing from your upper lung area, or are you actually taking a breath from the reason why your belly pushes out when you take a big deep breath is because your diaphragm actually pushes down. So are you actually breathing from that lower area, which enacts the parasympathetic, versus when you're breathing from a higher point, right? That's the stress sympathetic state. And so just checking in with your breath. Like at the beginning, I had to literally set an alarm on my phone every hour and to ask myself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling right now? I didn't even have language for what I was feeling. And so sometimes we don't necessarily have to name it. You don't have to go searching because that can keep you in your head, but you can just get a sense of what are the sensations I'm feeling in my body right now. And I think the breath is such an easy way to connect and to get connected with the body. There's other somatic exercises that you can do, but I think the breath, we always have our breath. So check in with your breath. Are you actually breathing? Literally, yes, we're all breathing, but are you taking those short breaths, or are you actually exhaling and, taking a full in breath and out breath?
Yeah, I love that. And I know a lot of people listening to this, for example, they love yoga or just force you like that heat and kind of those weird positions and stretches to, focus in on the sensations. And some people, to get into their body, they just turn off their phone for the rest of the day. And what the next question I have for you is, because what's really interesting is you talk about this idea of impact of travel on money beliefs, and you mentioned travel as a way to face and feel your money fears. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think that travel is the other thing I would say about getting into your body, to go back to that a little bit, is how many of us as adults get to play? How many of us actually are like, that is a way for me to get into my body immediately? What are the things? And that was an exercise in and of itself to figure out, what do I actually enjoy doing? Not from a stance of, okay, if I do this, then I'm going to generate money. Because so many of us high achievers want to be like, okay, I'm good at this, I can make this something. Versus, what do I get to do for myself to enjoy that no one else gets to experience, in the sense of it's just for me, myself? What am I doing to play? And for me, travel is a way, I think, that it can bring the unconscious to the conscious, because you're in a different environment. And you are really having to be conscious, because if you're driving somewhere, you're trying to figure out where you want to go. There's so much that allows you to be present with travel. And if you obviously love travel, and if you don't love travel, I'm always a big proponent of, don't just do something because someone suggests to do it, right? Like, really go back to, do I actually enjoy this? So for those of you that do love travel, think about when you travel, are you aware? Are you conscious? Are you able to give yourself reflection and downtime? I think so many of us, I just got back from a trip from Vancouver Island. And typically when we travel, it's very much slow paced, but this was just in a week. And I recognized how much I did not allow myself downtime to process, to think about the experiences, the people that I talked to, the integration, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think travel can really, if you allow it, can push you outside your comfort zone. Think about places that you may not want to visit because you have some ideas about what it might be like, or just think about, if you do love travel, what are the ways that it expands you? And it does this naturally if we allow it. We don't have to, I think sometimes we can, as high achievers, we can turn everything into a mental project versus just being, right? Being the person that just moves through time and space and recognizes things as we travel.
Yeah. And one thing that came to mind while you were talking is travel is the ultimate embodiment of freedom, because you have to have time,
Yeah.
and you have to have location, and you also have to have the finance. You have to be able to pay, and then also the emotional. And so what's really interesting is, I've seen myself included, is this to just let go is really hard, because like when you're traveling, like when I'm on vacation with my wife and my family, it's really hard to disconnect and just leave everything there. So what are some tools or strategies to just disengage? And because like when you're traveling and on vacation, your family wants you present. They don't want you thinking about emails and all that. How do you disengage?
Yeah. I think that's the first fallacy, is we think that travel or vacation, that's the way I used to think. I used to think, oh, I'm going on vacation, so this is my chance to like disengage, right? Versus travel is just a part of who you are, right? So you take yourself wherever you go. So if you are not practiced at being present, you're not going to just magically be present when you travel, because you have not built up that skill set yet of being present at home. So practice being who you are 100% of the time, versus I think a lot of us have been sold like, oh, we get to go on a 2-week vacation, we can finally relax. It's no, practice building up the skill set of being relaxed and calm in your everyday life, because then you just take yourself on to wherever country you're going to go, wherever city you're going to go, and you're going to be calm and you're going to be present. So I would go back to, okay, so as of right now at home, who are you? Who are you being? Are you being someone who is multitasking all the time, which is another thing that we've been sold, like we need to multitask? No, we can process one thing at a time. So are you doing one thing at a time? Are you actually checking in with your body on a consistent basis? Are you taking time to, and whether that, when I say meditate, I don't mean sitting in silence all the time. That could be walking and pondering, just some sort of connection with yourself and your body. What are you doing on a consistent basis? And so we we think that we have to go somewhere to unplug and to disconnect or to finally be present, but we can do that right here in our own house, in our own city. It's just we aren't practiced in that. So think about, who is that person that is present? What do they do differently? What do they feel differently? Who are they on a day in, day out basis? And then do a little note compare. How much is that of you, percentage of the day, and how much of it is not? And then just one little micro thing change, right? Like maybe it's, I put my phone down after X PM, or I don't get on social media after whatever. So just little tiny things. I always call it like the 1%. We don't need to change everything all at once, because I don't think that it's really, we'll stick with it. So what is the one thing that I'm going to change this week, and really focus on that, and then check in again and see, okay, what's the next thing that I want to, add? And really it's not add, it's more so take away, right? How can I be on my phone less? How can I, when my kid's talking to me in the car, how can I really focus on what they're saying to me, not on thinking about what am I planning for tomorrow and the next day? And this is a skill. Everyone has the capability to do it. I think a lot of us are in our heads a lot versus in our bodies. It's not a problem, right? Just recognizing where you are and knowing that is what has kept you safe, because being in our heads, we don't have to be in our bodies and feel what we're feeling. So that's what I would suggest.
Interesting. And I want to talk to you about, because I have two follow-up questions from that. And the first one is, talk about how setting boundaries, because in this day and age when like this work life is, before it was like you had a clear 9 to 5, but now it's like kind of everything's blended together. So how can people start to create boundaries so they're not always like feeling this urge to hustle or rush, or feel like they're missing out or they're behind?
Yeah, I think we have to get down to the root of, why do we feel like we have to hustle and we're behind? That comes from a place of stress, that comes from a place of habitual, right? This is such a simple thing to understand. It's not easy to do. Anything and everything we are ever going for is for a feeling. So if you actually start to get clear and ask yourself, what am I hustling for? Okay, I'm hustling to get my business to a certain point. Okay, because at what point, at that number or that client or whatever that is, what am I going to feel? We have to get to, what feeling are we chasing, and really get back to, okay, that feeling I can have in this moment. So that would be number one. The second would be really starting to recognize how much I don't think we talk about how much we really are in fight, flight, freeze, which I call more of a survival state versus a creative state. And for your listeners, and if they're medical doctors, they know this, right? Like we can't be thinking and having creative ideas when we're in this stressed state. So it's getting out of that. It's processing those emotions that have kept us in this cycle. And I don't know if you're aware of Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks a lot about that when we're in that state, our bodies want to serve that up again. So if you're used to feeling stress, your body is going to want to feel stress again, because that's a familiar feeling that you feel, right? So calm and peace doesn't feel very calm and peaceful in the beginning, right? Because we're so used to feeling stressed. So what I would say about boundaries is, I would say it comes back to clarity. What life have you actually sat down and thought about? What kind of life do I actually want to live? And even though we've been told and sold that the houses and the vacations and all of that, and yes, traveling is amazing and having really nice houses is great and all of that, yes. But there's a lot of us that have all of that and still feel very unfulfilled and satisfied. So we know that isn't the ticket, right? So it's really getting clear on, what do you want, and what do you want your life to look like, and what do you want your days to look like? And when I did this exercise, it was vastly different than what my days look like. And I would also encourage your listeners to think about, what do you value? Because what you value and what's on your calendar, most often than not, they don't coincide. They aren't a match for it. And so recognizing the boundaries are for us, they're not for other people. So when I think about a boundary, like one of the decisions that I've made with my kid is, I'm not making any decisions for her and her friends when she comes to me that day. Like if she wants to have a friend over, the answer is no. The boundary is I'm going to get a day or at least that day to decide when we're going to have a play date. So just recognizing where are you saying yes to things when you really want to say no to, and what kind of life do you want to have, and what are those feelings that you want to have on a consistent basis?
Mhm. Yeah, and what's interesting is because I love how you talk about this nervous system kind of dysregulation and this constant fight or flight, and you have to constantly like process and integrate. What's interesting is because, for example, like when you've actually done everything and you have this place of calm, and then it's like this, your brain is hardwired. Oh, what's next? I got to be hustling.
Yeah.
You know, I can't just sit back and relax. I got to do. What if people are just so in love? For example, like he or she is their career, their business, whatever, their creator, that's their passion. They could do it 24/7. They get into this flow state. And what's wrong with that? If they want to create or speak or travel or hustle
Nothing.
20.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like that you said the word, it's the flow state. But when you ask the question about with people and boundaries, but this hustle isn't flow state, right? Flow state is time passes and there's 8 areas of your life. And we talk a lot about work-life balance, but there are 6 other areas of our life that all of that actually has to be balanced. And balance doesn't necessarily mean equal in every single area. Balance just means, to me, balance means, am I paying attention and giving those equal, I don't want to say equal, but those, like, am I paying attention to all of those areas? I think a lot of us as overachievers, we're really focused on work, but we neglect maybe our health. We neglect spending time sometimes with our family. And that over time, you have to ask yourself, what am I trying to do in my work area that I'm neglecting in other areas? And it goes back to, I think, really childhood, right? What am I trying to prove? Because it comes sometimes from a proving energy. Now, when you're talking about, I love to work and it's a flow state, that's very different energy than I want to hustle and I want to get my business and I'm focusing on it and I'm thinking about it all the time. Because here's the thing. If you already had what you were chasing, you wouldn't be thinking about it all the time. You would just be being it, right? And so I think so many of us think that, no, but nothing, if you look at nature, does not go 100 miles an hour all the time. There are seasons. Like I said, we were in Vancouver Island and we went on to a whale watching, and the humpback whales, they rest, they sleep, they allow for play. They like, if we look at nature, are we being nature, or are we have been conditioned to hustle and to get to this place because then we get to rest? And the thing is you've built your nervous system up to never rest.
Yeah. And do you think this is more common because I've lived in Latin America and Europe, and they don't seem to have this problem. It's just in the Western, like especially in America.
Yeah.
Is that just our culture of capitalism, or just ingrained by the media and the school system, or is that just innate in capitalism, or?
Yeah, I would say both, actually, because I've talked to, and maybe it looks a little bit different, but I've talked to people all over the world, traveled all over the world, and it's a different flavor. I remember I was talking to a woman who was walking me. We were in Thailand and Chiang Mai, and she was talking about how her family was wanting her to do something. And she was like, I don't really want to, but there was a lot of shoulds. And I said, it's interesting. It doesn't matter where I go. We have those shoulds, and it may look different. Maybe it's different from a cultural standpoint, but we have these expectations that have been placed on us that we aren't truly living truly to who we are and what we want versus. And so I think it probably is more heavier in the US because the media is controlled and they control what goes on and what gets talked about, and they have their agendas and politicians and all of the banking industry, the financial, like all of it. So I think you have that. But I think at the end of the day, like one of the things that I love about travel and that it's really taught me is we all are so different, and yet we all are so the same. And so I have my shoulds they might come from a different place of expectations of what a good mom looks like or what a business owner is supposed to be. And she had her shoulds. They were a little bit different, but they were still shoulds. And so I do think that the Western world is very much so money driven. And we also, and it's not the best, example, right? Look at our health, look at what's going on currently within the US. So I do think that we definitely have been conditioned and we don't question it. We don't stop to think, because if you're in hustle mode, when do you have the space and the time to ponder? Is that actually what I want to believe in? Is that actually what I want to do? Does that feel good for me and my family and my values?
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of a quote Tony Robbins. He's we have 6 human needs, and we have values and beliefs, and at the core of it, it's humans. That's why you see celebrities like commit suicide or go into drugs. And one final question is, because I want to get your perspective on this. And one thing that, because I had a college friend, and he took his company public, and he was talking about this epidemic of among the super, like the 0.01%. And he was saying they're lonely. They have their circle, but it's all professional, and they can't get too close to them because they're afraid of
Getting taken advantage of, or
betrayal,
yeah.
or like they don't they don't get married, they don't have kids, they come into this big house, it's all lonely. What's going on there, where you have just all this massive wealth, but just like you can't share with people and you're afraid?
Yeah. Obviously, I don't know because I'm not in his body, but the things that I have noticed with myself and with clients that I have supported is it all comes down to safety and security. And how many of us have been taught that money does that for us? And it doesn't, right? Because if it does, then there would be people that have lots of money that would feel totally secure. And we know that's not the case because they think they need more of it. And so I think when you say lonely, it's like, how many of us have been taught or shown how to be with ourselves, how to love ourselves, how to believe in us, not just from a business standpoint, but like each of us are geniuses and the best. And how many of us actually have a good self-esteem, or how many of us are actually trying to do the thing to make us feel? And I think that I do see that. I think a lot of people are trying to get something, to, like you said at the very beginning, to fill this void within us. And here's the deal. We all have it, right? Like we all have it. How many of us are working towards filling that and meeting our own needs and that own love that we are trying to get outside of ourselves? And when I say love, it could be romantic love. It could be friendship love. It could be love from our business. A lot of us try to make our business, right, our lover, in terms of fulfilling that need that we are missing. And so how many of us are actually doing the internal work versus trying to get the external to get us to feel what we are missing on inside?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. How can people find out more about you and reach out to you? Because I really love your thoughts and I really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah. You can go to my website, Generate a Life Well Lived, or my podcast, same thing on Apple, Generate a Life Well Lived.
Yeah. And thanks so much for coming on. I think the audience got a lot of value from that, and keep up the great work.
Yeah. Thanks, Christopher.